What if I told you that behind Elon Musk's empire stands a woman whose life is more extraordinary, more dangerous, and far more resilient than the story you think you know? Maye Musk didn't just raise a billionaire, she survived deserts, poverty, abuse, and reinvention on 3 continents. And if you stay until the end, you'll discover the one lesson she taught her children that Elon says shaped every company he ever built. The childhood that forged an adventurer's mind. Long before Maye Musk became the world's oldest supermodel, a global dietitian, or the mother behind a multi-billion-dollar empire, she was a little girl living a life so extreme that it sounds like something lifted straight from an adventure novel. Her parents were not ordinary dreamers. They were explorers who treated danger like a daily companion. Decades ago, when navigation technology cost thousands of dollars and was reserved for commercial or military aircraft, her parents flew a single-engine canvas plane across more than 30,000 miles of Africa, Arabia, Asia, and Australia, guided only by a compass. No radio, no autopilot, just instinct, courage, and a willingness to trust the sky. Before that, the family had already completed another improbable journey, sailing from Canada to South Africa in a small boat equipped with little more than basic tools and ration supplies. There were no luxuries on board, no heating, no cushioned cabins, no refrigeration. Every decision was a calculation of survival. Every wave was a test. Growing up in that environment meant childhood for Maye was nothing like the suburban world most people imagine. She spent weekends trekking across vast deserts like the Kalahari, where her family searched for rumored lost cities, following maps handwritten by early explorers. They traveled with minimal water, often carrying only what their small vehicle could hold. On some expeditions, she and her twin sister shared a single cup of water for an entire day. That was not a metaphor, that was life. At night, they slept directly on the ground, zipped tightly in sleeping bags, not for warmth, but to keep hyenas from sniffing or biting at exposed limbs. There were no tents, no electricity, no gear worth more than a few dollars. Survival depended solely on preparation, intuition, and resilience. These experiences didn't just shape her childhood, they defined the architecture of her thinking. When you grow up learning that scarcity is normal, that danger is temporary, and that courage is practical, not poetic, you develop a worldview that most people never touch in their lifetimes. That philosophy, resilience over comfort, curiosity over fear, became the foundation she later passed on to her children. It is the mindset that helped produce a filmmaker, a global restaurateur, and the man who would build rockets, electric cars, and companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Comment Maye Origins if you want the next chapter of how this survival-born mindset shaped her journey into modeling and motherhood. Lessons of scarcity that later built an empire of discipline. When Maye Musk stepped into adulthood, she didn't walk into comfort or luxury. She entered life with the same mindset her parents had carried through oceans and deserts. Survive first, elevate later. That worldview shaped every financial decision she made, long before her family became tied to companies worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Her first apartment was not a curated space filled with furniture or decoration. It was a nearly empty room in South Africa, with cement floors and thin walls that amplified every sound from the neighbors. When she received her very first paycheck as a dietitian, a modest amount, barely enough to cover rent and groceries, she didn't splurge on a couch, a dining table, or anything resembling comfort. She bought a carpet, a simple piece costing the equivalent of a few $100s today. It wasn't decoration, it was practicality. The carpet kept the cold from seeping into the room and gave her young children a place to sit, study, and dream. Chairs came much later. In fact, chairs didn't arrive until she had already purchased something far more important, a computer. It was an expensive machine at the time, valued in the modern equivalent of more than $1,000, but Maye saw it as an investment, not an indulgence. The children sat on the carpet balancing the computer on stacked textbooks, learning to navigate early software long before coding camps and online tutorials existed. That computer would become the first gateway into a world of digital possibility, a world her youngest son, Elon Musk, would eventually reshape entirely. This pattern of choosing necessity over comfort wasn't an aesthetic choice. It was survival strategy. Maye lived in apartments where every utility bill had to be calculated, where food was purchased based on nutrient density per dollar, and where luxuries didn't exist unless they served a purpose. When the family moved countries from South Africa to Toronto, then to the United States, the same rules applied. Suitcases were filled with essential clothing, school supplies, and a few personal treasures. There were no expensive toys, no branded items, nothing unnecessary weighing them down. These habits directly influenced Elon's famous $1 a day college challenge, where he lived off hot dogs, oranges, and basic staples to test his own resilience. It wasn't a stunt, it was a muscle memory inherited from his mother. Scarcity taught him confidence, frugality taught him freedom, and discipline taught him to take risks others wouldn't dare. The empire that came later, SpaceX, Tesla, solar energy, AI, grew from seeds planted on a cold floor, with children sitting cross-legged on a carpet, learning from a computer their mother bought before she ever bought chairs. The parenting philosophy that raised 3 global powerhouses. Long before the world analyzed her parenting through the lens of 3 wildly successful children, Maye Musk was crafting a home where discipline, kindness, and self-reliance were not just rules, they were survival tools. She raised 6 children in environments that rarely offered stability, often working multiple jobs while navigating new cities, new countries, and the unpredictable demands of modeling and dietetics. Yet within that chaos, she built a system so intentional and structured that it became the backbone of the Musk family legacy. Her approach to parenting wasn't loud or dramatic, it was consistent, precise, almost surgical. When her children were young, she set expectations early. They would be polite, they would be punctual, and they would work hard without waiting for applause. Entitlement was not tolerated. Even when their circumstances later changed and financial stability finally arrived, she'd watched too many families lose themselves to comfort. She refused to let that happen to hers. As years passed and her family expanded to 12 grandchildren, her routines evolved but never softened. She insisted on spending 30 minutes one-on-one each week with every grandchild, a practice that required meticulous scheduling across modeling shoots, consulting appointments, international flights, and book events. Some weeks she was in New York, other weeks in Los Angeles, London, or Toronto, but wherever she landed, the rule held. Each child deserved focused time. In those half-hour sessions, she taught table manners, communication skills, and the kind of gentle confidence that stays with a person for life. What made her system remarkable wasn't strictness, it was the way she paired discipline with warmth. She corrected behavior calmly but firmly. She expected respect, but modeled it first. She didn't shout, she structured. She didn't bribe, she guided. Her household functioned like a miniature training ground for adulthood, where every responsibility served a purpose and every routine prepared her children for larger futures. And leading by example wasn't a cliché for her, it was logistics. She managed the workload of a woman running 3 careers simultaneously: international modeling contracts, a dietetics practice with clients across countries, and writing commitments that often required revisions on flights or in hotel rooms. Her children saw her build schedules with military precision, reshuffle days when emergencies arose, and make the impossible fit into the margins of her calendar. In that environment, responsibility wasn't taught, it was absorbed. Watching her navigate life with relentless punctuality and adaptability, her children learned that success wasn't about talent, it was about consistency. And that consistency became the quiet engine behind a filmmaker, a restaurateur, and a man shaping industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Reinventing herself through health, fashion, and global influence. When Maye Musk stepped into her 30s, the world around her looked nothing like the glamorous runway life she inhabits today. She was living in South Africa, raising children, managing a turbulent personal life, and carrying the emotional weight of a painful breakup. The stress showed, slowly at first, then all at once. Her weight climbed, her joints ached, her cholesterol spiked, and the mirror reflected a version of herself she barely recognized. Yet, even in that season, necessity shaped opportunity. Modeling had always been a part of her life, but now she found herself entering the plus-size modeling category, not by ambition, but by circumstance. In the 1980s, plus-size modeling wasn't the inclusive movement it is today. It was limited, niche, and paid far less than mainstream fashion work. The average catalog shoot might offer compensation worth a few $100s, barely enough to cover rent or school expenses. But Maye took the assignments anyway. Not for glamour, but because her family needed the income. She arrived on set with the same professionalism as any high-end model, wearing outfits pinned, tailored and structured to fit body types brands rarely highlighted at the time. But beneath the professionalism, she knew she couldn't stay where she was. The weight gain wasn't cosmetic, it was affecting her health. So she engineered her own transformation using the discipline she later became famous for. Over months of controlled nutrition, carefully portioned meals, and strict consistency, she lost 30 kilograms, 65 pounds. There was no celebrity trainer, no wellness sponsorship, no high-end program. She was a dietitian using her own expertise to rebuild herself one meal at a time. The shift restored more than her health, it revived her career. As her body changed, modeling opportunities grew. By the time she entered her 70s, an age when most models had long since retired, she was flying across continents for editorial shoots, fashion campaigns, and international brand work. COVID-19 didn't slow her pace. She adapted to temperature checks, mask protocols, and socially distanced sets in cities like New York, Paris, and Toronto. Photographers were stunned, not just by her presence, but by her stamina. And yet, for all the discipline, she wasn't rigid. She openly admitted she loved ice cream, desserts, and sweet indulgences. She simply treated them as moments, not habits. That balance, that tension between enjoyment and control, became the secret behind her longevity. Health wasn't a phase, it was a lifestyle built on awareness, adaptation, and daily intentionality. Her reinvention wasn't dramatic or sudden, it was methodical. Brick by brick, choice by choice, she rebuilt not just her body, but the global influence she now carries in every campaign, every runway, and every photograph stamped with her name. The pain, the marriage, and the strength that shaped her children. Before the magazine covers, the global fashion campaigns, and the polished image of a woman aging with impossible grace, Maye Musk lived years that almost no one in her modern audience would recognize. Her marriage to Elon Musk is detailed most openly in her memoir, A Woman Makes a Plan, where she describes one of the most challenging seasons of her life, not through sensationalism, but through clarity. The contrast between the public life she built later and the private life she endured earlier is so sharp it feels like two different timelines. She entered the marriage young with 3 children, limited financial security, and a determination to build something stable despite the constraints around her. But stability never came. What did come were years of emotional strain that pushed her to the edge of what a young mother could carry while raising a household. At that time, South African housing markets were difficult, and the home she lived in, a modest property valued today at roughly $150,000 to $200,000, felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage from which she had to plan her escape. Leaving wasn't simply a matter of walking out. Divorce, especially with children, came with real financial cost. Maye had to navigate legal fees equivalent today to several $1,000s, relocation expenses, and the responsibility of raising 3 children on a dietitian's income that was far from glamorous. She moved into smaller apartments, often with outdated flooring, limited heating, and cramped bedrooms where the kids shared space, not because it was charming, but because it was what she could afford. Yet, even in hardship, she made intentional choices. She prioritized food, safety, and education. She stretched every dollar the way she later taught her children to stretch their potential. And through these years, her children watched her rebuild piece by piece, balancing clients, rushing between modeling shoots, and making sure homework still got done at the kitchen table. Elon would later speak about developing a high tolerance for pain, both physical and emotional, a trait that became crucial when he faced bankrupt companies, failed rockets costing $60 million per launch, and financial risk that could wipe out entire fortunes. That tolerance didn't come from books or mentors. It came from observing a mother who survived, persisted, and protected her children with a level of determination that shaped them more than comfort ever could. And even after the divorce, she maintained close bonds with all 3 children, meeting them frequently, nurturing their dreams, and building a family culture rooted not in wealth or resentment, but in resilience and decisiveness. It was in those years of rebuilding, not the years of glamour, that the foundation of the Musk legacy was truly formed. Guiding 3 extraordinary children toward their own empires, What made Maye Musk remarkable as a mother wasn't that she raised 3 successful children, it was that she raised 3 entirely different empires under one roof, each built from a personality she understood with near clinical precision. There was no one-size-fits-all approach. She looked at each child the way an architect studies the lines of 3 very different blueprints, recognizing that their foundations required different materials, different pressures, different kinds of guidance. With Tosca Musk, she saw creativity that refused to be contained. Tosca wasn't interested in traditional career paths. She was fascinated by stories, emotion, and the mechanics of film long before cameras became affordable household items. When Tosca later founded Passionflix, a romance film streaming platform valued in the tens of millions, it didn't surprise Maye. She had watched her daughter obsess over character arcs and scripts when they barely had money for toys. That spark came early, and Maye never tried to reshape it. Kimball Musk, meanwhile, was wired differently. He loved the energy of business, the rhythm of restaurants, the way food acted as a point of connection. Years before Kimball built farm-to-table ventures, opened restaurants across multiple states, or invested in urban farming projects worth millions, Maye had already noticed his instinct for hospitality. He was the child who paid attention to how people gathered, how meals brought warmth, how conversations shaped room. She nurtured that, not by pushing, but by making space for it to grow. Then there was Elon Musk, the child who consumed information at a pace no one could match. Maye didn't have the money for engineering kits or high-tech toys, so she invested in something far cheaper but infinitely more powerful: encyclopedias. Thick, heavy volumes costing a fraction of what children's electronics did, yet filled with entire universes of definitions, diagrams, and explanations. Elon read them the way other children watched television, front to back, over and over again. It was his first database, his first search engine, long before the world relied on digital ones. Maye always believed that education wasn't about degrees or credentials, but about curiosity fed at the right time. And under her roof, 3 different curiosities, film, food, and physics, were given the freedom to evolve, eventually becoming industries worth hundreds of millions of dollars combined. The values that built a billionaire family legacy. What makes the Musk family fascinating isn't just the scale of their achievements or the staggering valuations attached to their work. Companies worth tens of billions in film, food innovation, clean energy, electric vehicles, and aerospace. What truly sets them apart is the invisible architecture underneath it all. A set of values so deeply ingrained that they span 3 generations, from Maye's explorer parents to the children and grandchildren now shaping industries across continents. At the center of that architecture is resilience. Not the abstract, motivational kind, but the lived-in resilience of a woman who learned early that comfort is a luxury and survival is a skill. Maye grew up watching her parents cross oceans and deserts with nothing but a compass, and she carried that same steadiness into every phase of her life. When her children later began building companies, whether a streaming platform requiring millions in investor funding or a restaurant empire rooted in real estate and supply chain logistics, they inherited her ability to adapt quickly, endure setbacks, and stay focused under financial and emotional pressure. Another core value was humility, something Maye enforced with quiet but unwavering consistency. Even after her children reached success, Tosca directing films with multi-million-dollar budgets, Kimball expanding restaurant ventures into cities where commercial leases cost upwards of $30,000 per month, and Elon steering companies with market caps exceeding $800 billion, she insisted that respect, kindness, and consideration remain non-negotiable. In her world, achievement never excused arrogance. Then there was discipline, the kind that doesn't fade with age. Even in her 70s, Maye continued modeling, writing, consulting, and traveling for work, sometimes juggling schedules that younger professionals struggled to maintain. Her calendar wasn't built around comfort, it was built around purpose. She treated her commitments the same way financial investors treat portfolios: evaluate, prioritize, execute. These values, resilience, humility, discipline, curiosity, were not taught through lectures or rules. They were absorbed through observation, repetition, and the daily rhythms of a mother who embodied them without compromise. And in the end, they became the quiet engine behind not just the success of Elon, Kimball, and Tosca, but behind the identity of a family whose influence now stretches from Hollywood studios to global farming initiatives and rocket fleets piercing the atmosphere. Comment Maye Legacy if you want the final chapter exploring how her values continue shaping the next generation of the Musk family. Maye Musk's journey from surviving the Kalahari desert with 1 cup of water to becoming a global supermodel at 70 shows how strength, discipline, and unwavering humility can build an empire far more powerful than wealth alone. Her influence shaped Elon, Tosca, and Kimball in ways the world rarely sees, and her legacy continues to inspire millions. If her story moved you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and stay tuned, because part 2 will reveal the hidden habits, routines, and personal rules that Maye still follows to keep her billionaire family grounded.